Everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. And today I'm here with another regionals report. Yes, I know. How do I keep doing it? I came top 4 at Stockton over the weekend, and I was playing YVeltal Gallade Zoroark, an archetype that's pretty much popped up during the start of American Cities. And I thought I'd play the deck myself, and as you can see, I did pretty well with it. So let's jump into it. As per usual, let's start with a recap from last week. I was at Newport, but as you can see, I didn't actually make top 8, so this is the only regional that I went to where I didn't top cut so far, which is a bit of a shame. And it was the first week that Breakthrough was legal, so it was a bit of a blind meta game. I decided to go with YVeltal Vespiquen Bats, a very similar build to the one that won me the tournament in London, but this time with a much higher Pokemon count. I think I ended up playing 27 or 28 on the day. And you can see Ross Gilbert there, who came in 7th place. He was playing the exact same 60 cards as me. We pretty much came up with a list together. We shared it and stuff throughout the week. So, and he actually beat me on the way in Swiss as well, when we were both on 3-0-1 records. And then I ended up losing to Ross, and then I also lost to Scott Simmons, the eventual winner, in my final round of Swiss. So it looked like I was on to top cut again when I was at 3-0-1. Record, but I lost my last 2 rounds on the bounce. It was a bit of a shame, so I didn't come into the top cut, but here are the guys who did. Scott Simmons ended up winning with Manectric Crobat, and that is an archetype that's very, very strong. It's now won 2 of the UK regionals. And then we see Shyam. He was playing Mega Manectric Regice build, coming in 2nd. Then we see Nilo and Nitish, both with Lucario Bats decks. I think Lucario Bats is slightly stronger with Breakthrough because the introduction of Jirachi means there's a lot less Giratina around, and Giratina was a real good check to Lucario, so no surprise that we see a couple of those in top cut. We see another Manectric build in at 5th place, Jamie Serhan actually playing it with Giratina, which is an interesting take on the deck. Then we see Rick Cherry with YVeltal EX and Zoroark, pretty nice there, one of the only people to gamble with a proper new Breakthrough deck. And then we see Ross, like I say, with the Vespiquen variant, and also Reese Williams with Trevgar, which is another interesting pick as well. I think quite a good pick for week 1 of Breakthrough, because it's a bit of a blind meta. You can catch people by surprise by getting a Wally turn 1. And if people haven't got optimal builds, it's quite likely that in the first week, people don't have quite optimal builds yet. Definitely if people are gambling with newer decks, stuff like Trevenant can really punish that. So good to see that make the top 8 as well. So analysing Newport and leading into Stockton, what was I expecting? Well, as you can see, Night March didn't actually make cut. I think this is the first regional where Night March did not cut at all. And I think that's just due to the amount of bat decks. Night March has been so popular as of late that everyone has now resorted to playing bat decks just to counter it. I think Vespiquen is one of the best ways to do this, by having the Vespiquen bat build that pretty much myself and Ross came up with. And I think Vespiquen now is going to fill the void of Night March by becoming the new sort of powerhouse non-EX based deck, because it has a very similar playstyle to Night March. It just has a slightly better chance against bat builds because, slightly more HP. They only have that small window of opportunity to kill Combees, and even then, if you can develop multiple Vespiquen, then you are starting to get ahead in your strategy all over again. So I think going into Stockton, I was more prepared to face Vespiquen than I was to play against Night March. I was also expecting to see quite a bit of Manectric Bats. That's because, like I say, it's won 2 regionals now, so people have got to start picking up the deck and taking notice at this point. Luke has been playing it all season, basically, and he's top ranked in the UK right now, so the deck is clearly good. It's been surprising that not many people have picked up on it as of late, but I felt at Stockton a lot more people would take notice of Manectric Bats. And like I said just a second ago, I thought Lucario Crobat, because it's been cutting most weeks, definitely the last 2, it's cut at least once. And I thought, yeah, it improves because there's less Giratina around. So it also can have a good matchup against Manectric. It's kind of debatable whether it's favourable or not, but it's at least a 50-50 matchup. So yeah, it's good to have 50-50s or better against the popular decks, and Lucario does indeed do that. So, for those of you who didn't check out the Charizard Lounge, they actually came up with a big compilation of the City Championships results in America which is really good because it gives us a good insight into what those people are sort of playing and the general consensus of what the best decks are at the moment, because, you know, it's only been the first week of Breakthrough. We don't really know the metagame quite well enough right now, still developing, and having this information was pretty crucial. It meant that we could see the top 3 decks after that first week of City Championships, and they seem to be Night March, Manectric builds, and also YVeltal Zoroark, which often played Gallade. And Rick Cherry was the only person to play YVeltal Zoroark during the Newport Regional. No one was playing Gallade, and for those of you who don't know, Gallade has been a card I've been testing since the release of the set. One of the first breakthrough deck analysis that I came up with was a YVeltal Gallade based deck, and that was before the set was even legal. I was using proxies for the Gallades. So it's clearly been a card that's been on my mind. I really love the card. I knew it had such potential, but I was finally given confidence to actually play this card after seeing it do well in America, which is amazing. Also, like I say, Rick Cherry's performance at Newport demonstrated that YVeltal and Zoroark have huge potential right now. Baby YVeltal is just so good against the Night Marchers. We have so many options in the deck, it's just really good. So, oh, here we go. This is a better way to explain it. I knew I threw it in somewhere. This is why I really like YVeltal Gallade. It just has so many options. Here's the 4 highlighted attackers. So Baby YVeltal, it's basically a win condition against Night March on his own, because you can kill a Night Marcher each turn, no questions asked, basically. And he's also really good against these the Vespiquen decks, and also Manectric Bats, because with Muscle Band, we can take early prizes, which is really nice, while setting up other attackers on our bench, be it Zoroarks or YVeltal EXs, stuff like that. And 130 HP is quite a big thing to get over for a couple of decks right now. Like, Vespiquen has to properly commit if they want to start killing even just regular YVeltals, which is pretty cool because it forces them into an awkward spot really early into the game. They have to be digging through their deck very early on, and that's not always easy for a Vespiquen player, otherwise they'll start falling behind, which is pretty awesome. And also stuff like Lucario Crobat, they don't like having to commit that much to things like Lucario. They normally have to commit multiple energies to Lucario, and then we can come in and start swinging with YVeltal EX, which loves to mop up Lucarios. Also, Gallade's damage starts doing good numbers after we've hit our opponent with a couple of early Oblivion Wings. So, plenty of reasons why Baby YVeltal is really strong right now. I was pretty much set that I was going to play Baby YVeltal no matter what deck I played, just because I thought Night March would still be popular. So I was certain that I was playing Baby YVeltal, and this is just what I wanted to play around with. So, YVeltal EX, we know this is a fantastic card. It's great against Lucario Bats. It can 2-shot most EXs just by using his second attack, Y Cyclone. And in the process, we get to move double colorless energies onto other threats on our board. Stuff like Zoroark and stuff like Gallade. Even at times other YVeltal EXs. So really, really good card. Energy conservation. And Evil Ball can do huge numbers against a bunch of different things as well. So really nice there. Zoroark, he's another fantastic attacker. This is just a mishmash of crazy good attackers. That's why I really like the deck. It also sort of limits your opponent's bench. They have to play around Zoroark because that Mind Jack is just so strong. 10 plus 30 for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It means that we can get over stuff like Regice like ridiculously easily. It's not a problem for us at all. It means that we can sometimes even threaten EXs. If we have Muscle Band on Zoroark and they have a full bench, we've got a one hit, which is pretty insane. So your opponent basically has to either pretty much accept the fact that they can get one shot by a non-EX, which is awesome for prize trade, or they choose not to bench certain things. It means they can't put down those extra Zubats if they're a Lucario Bat player or a Manectric Bat player. It means they can't put down that extra Shaman for a few more cards because they're always in fear of this Zoroark, which is just such a cool option to have. Also, I decided to play the Break in my deck, and the Break is also really nice as an attacker. For just a single Dark Energy, we can steal attacks from stuff like Giratina, Tyrantrum, Seismitoad, and Manectric. All very popular cards right now. And, Manectric can't even one-shot the Break. Giratina can't one-shot the Break in response. Toad does pitiful damage against the Break. And Tyrantrum, yeah, it can sort of trade one-hits, but coming in with a non-EX just to kill a Tyrantrum is really good for you. Especially if you can combine it with stuff like Hex Maniac. You pretty much prevent the Giratina, the Giratina Tyrantrum player getting a response KO on Zoroark. And if they're not response KOing, you can just Lysander something else up the following turn and steal their attack again because you still have that energy on board. So absolutely amazing to have that option of the break as well. So overall, really good attackers. And then, of course, there's Gallade, the pick of the bunch, in my opinion. One of the best attackers in the deck, as well as like having such a great ability. He covers YVeltal's weakness, which is a huge, obviously huge starting point. We know that YVeltal Regirock is also a thing right now. I much prefer the Gallade, much more versatile card. And seeing as though a lot of Manectric builds are playing Flash Energy anyway, like, I'd rather not play Regirock and just have Gallade because he's more sort of universally good. And also his HP is nicer. Some Manectric decks, if they just put Giovanni in their deck, they can actually one-shot Regirock's back. So Gallade is always going to have tank ability against Manectric decks. So I definitely think Gallade is the superior option. Although, you know, sometimes you won't get Gallade out, so you have to sort of scoop games. So Gallade is definitely the sort of pick if you are playing a best of 3 format. I know in American cities it's best of 1, and in that sort of circumstance I'd probably encourage the Regirock if you're expecting Manectric. But I'm not just playing Gallade because he's a Manectric counter, I'm playing him because of his Premonition, and Premonition is insanely good. I mean, I could not have, like, even though I was rating it really highly in my mind, like, it is so much better in practice being able to top deck what you want. It's just insane. So good. Also, the Sensitive Blade is fantastic at killing Shamans as well, so just having this extra 2 prizes, basically, your opponent is always going to be in fear of putting down Shamans and stuff. Oh, you just play around with your opponent's board so much just by having these attackers available to you. So many good things in this deck. So, yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to play it. So many good options. We have flexibility with stand-in that Zoroark provides, so we can move in between our attackers whenever we need to. We have some sort of acceleration in the early game. We have conservation tactics with YVeltal EX. And then Zoroark and Gallade just work off of DCE, so we can get attackers coming out of nowhere almost every turn, which is absolutely insane. It means we're pretty much never running out of things to do, which is really good. So yeah, I just really think the deck is amazing. I can't believe not many people picked up on it at Newport. I knew about the deck, obviously, because I had it built and stuff, but I wasn't confident enough in it. But now that I've played it at a tournament, wow, I think it is probably the best deck in format right now, and it probably needs to be countered. That's actually one of the best things about this deck. It's a very difficult deck to counter, because Gallade covers your own weakness. You can come up with different attackers each time. If random things like Tyrantrum start getting good, you can throw the break back into the deck, and the break can really help out against Tyrantrum. So there's plenty of options for YVeltal to keep expanding and keep itself near the top of the tables most of the time. So really strong deck. I highly encourage you guys to play it. So with that all said and done, here's the list that I played in Stockton. And I'm going to be showing you a list in a second because I'm not completely sold on the list that I played. But this is where I sort of stood going into the deck. Like I say, the break I did include, and that was actually a last minute change in the morning of the event. Just because I wasn't sure how popular Giratina was going to be. It turned out that I didn't face any Giratina, but there were a couple of Giratina players around. So I think I'm still happy that I had the break evolution in the deck. The reason why, in a second I take it out, is just because it's something that stops the Gallade combo for a start. It's a card that you can't you have to discard it via Ultra Ball or something like that. And also, just because we're playing a 2-2-1 line, you don't actually get the Zoroark break out very often. When you do get him out, yes, he can be really fantastic, but a lot of the time, at that point in the game, we have so many other good attackers anyway. Like, you can choose to use the break evolution, but there's also probably 2 or 3 other attackers on our board anyway at that point that can do just as good of a job as him, let alone just the regular Zoroark for double colourless. So the break is sort of not necessary, depending on metagame, obviously. If there's plenty of Manectric around, you might want the break just for an extra attacking option, so that there's not so much incentive on Gallade. Also, yeah, Giratina and Tyrantrum. I think Tyrantrum's going to be cropping up a bit more, just because it can sort of counter YVeltal EX. He can hit the EXs for one shot and then move all the energy off of him as well to sort of protect him a bit. So the break might become useful again there. So I'm pretty happy that I played the break, but he wasn't actually that useful across the day. Couple other things. I'm playing a 2-2 split of Acrobike and Unknown. This is definitely my best way of playing it. I know that Ryan Morehouse, the guy who eventually wins this tournament played just for Acrobike. But there's a couple of reasons why I like the Unknown in here. One is to judge-proof yourself. You can see we're playing 2 judges in the deck, and if you put Unknown onto your bench, use Judge, then you can Premonition and use Unknown to draw yourself out of the Judge each time, if that makes sense. So you're not really disrupting yourself at all, because you have the Unknown option. Also, just at random times in the game, if you're being... if you just want that extra card, Unknown's a nice auto-play card down to your bench, and you can pop it off to get an extra card. I know that Acrobike's probably stronger in the early game, trying to actually get the Maxis combo off. So I can completely see Acrobike being justified, but Unknown's a bit more versatile. You can choose when to play it. You're less weak to Judge from your own judges and your opponent's judges, because Judge is a card that's becoming more and more popular as the weeks go by, because hand disruption is just so key to the game, to be honest. And it also resets other players' Gallade's top decks if you judge them, so that's a pretty important card as well. So Unknown really nice in that instance. I'm actually playing Super Odd in my new build. You know what? Let's just skip to the good build. Here we go. You can see I've got Super Odd there. So the things I've taken out, I've cut a Darkness Energy and I've cut a Baby YVeltal. The reason I initially played 4 was because I was worried about Night March. But I didn't play any, and I think it's going down in play just because of the amount of bats being around. And even then, if you have Super Odd plus 3 Baby YVeltal, you have the option to recover those anyway throughout a game. So I think 3 is definitely fine. Also, like I say, decided to cut the break because he's kind of too situational in my opinion. I put that in favour of, the Super Odd. The Zoroark was something I didn't play, but I do quite like it. For stuff like mirror matches, you can get rid of DCEs, which is quite important for setting your opponent back a turn. Also, it's a supporter that you can just play with Gallade, and sometimes you just need any supporter to play with Gallade. And, there are times when you don't want to Sycamore, don't want to Judge, don't want to Lysander something up. So oftentimes I found myself VS Seekering for Hex because I had nothing better to do. So I feel like in those sort of situations, Zoroark might have been a better option to try and, disrupt my opponent's bench or something while I was still taking the, getting the extra damage set up for Gallade, The only other inclusion I added was a 3rd muscle band. Playing 2 was nice, but there were times when it's just so important to have that 3rd one. It gives you the option to throw it onto Zoroarks to get those big knockouts. So much nicer on Gallade because it means you can actually kill stuff like Crobat that a lot of people are just playing in general, and then Crobat actually ends up being really good in that matchup because sometimes Gallade is stuck in the active position and you can't one-shot the Crobat in front of you. So Muscle Band allows us to do that. Muscle Band in general is such a good math fixer, helps out, like I say, against the Vespiquen decks early on when you're using Baby YVeltal. Helps out with YVeltal EX because then you can kill Shaman, and it also protects you from Headringers as well. So I felt like the inclusion of a 3rd Muscle Band was very important. You can see I've still got the 2 Acrobike, 2 Unknown split. I'm completely happy on this split. Especially, like I say, we have Super Odd, so we can recover Unknowns for extra uses out of them. So I definitely think Unknown should be played in the deck, personally. Especially because, as well, you find yourself decking out a lot more if you play 4 Acrobike as opposed to 2 Unknown. The deck can get really thin when you need to, because, of course, we're playing 4 Compressor, 2 Acrobike, Mail, Ultra Ball, everything like that. So you mill through your deck quite quickly. And Acrobike puts extra pressure on that sort of thing, so puts you on more of a clock. Whereas Unknown, you don't need, obviously you don't need to play the Acrobikes, but if you're looking to top deck things via Gallade, I'd rather do it via Unknown, because you just get that single card, and you're not discarding, other resources and stuff along the way, because normally we're going to compressor the useless stuff away, so our deck will all be useful. So Acrobike is normally going to be painful, if that makes sense. So I do prefer the 2-2 split overall. So yeah, there's the deck. Just plenty of attacking options. Trying to get as consistent maxes as possible. That's why we've got the 2-2 count, because we always want to see it basically in most games. Whenever you develop Gallade, you're in a really good spot because you have the extra, knowledge of top decks. You can get into your VS Seekers if you need to hit Lysanders. You can get into double colorless if you need an energy for the next turn. All of these things, Gallade just really helps you get there. So I feel like it's a real advantage to have him on the field. And just in general, even if he's not going to be a useful attacker for you, that Premonition is still really, really strong. So this would be the list that I would go off of, guys. I think this is the best list that I could come up with. I think it's actually pretty close to Ryan's final list. I played him a lot. I played him in Swiss and in Top Cut. So I've seen a lot of his deck because at one point he basically decked out. One card I think I don't have in here that he did play was what was it? Parallel City. He played Parallel City, and it actually came in useful in our Top Cut games. But overall, I couldn't find the space for it. I'd rather put the Zoroark in than the Parallel City, and he did play both. So I don't know where he made this space from. Well done to him. But I can't find any space for that extra Parallel. It's a bit of a luxury card in my opinion. So there we are. On to the round by round, I think. Oh no, let's talk about Beanie Games. Beanie Games is where the tournament was held. That's a photo from the event. Let me put where the mouse is. That's me right there, the little ginger guy. Well, not very little either. But yeah, 70 Masters. You know, it's not the biggest regional we've had so far. But it was 7 rounds of Swiss. Just analysing the tables across the day. There was very few Night March players around. Plenty of Manectric bats and a lot of Vespiquen-based bats, Vespiquen builds. Most of them are bat-based with YVeltal. There was also a few Bronzong-based as well, so a lot of Vespiquen around. There was actually a handful of YVeltal Gallade, so there's a few people checking out those City Championship, City Champs results and rolling with the deck. It's done pretty well. A couple of them made cuts, so pretty good there. And there was also a couple of people playing Mega Sceptile, and I think this was a very intelligent play. A few people bubbled with Sceptile. I think Oliver Barnett came in 9th, and Adam Hawkins also got top 16 with Mega Sceptile. And I feel like Mega Sceptile's a good play right now. So many bat-based builds. Sceptile can really prey on those. And it's also got actually a pretty good matchup against YVeltal, Zoroark, Gallade, because normally all of those things are outside of one-shot range. So as long as you can get into that combo of getting the Megas up, you should be fine to win quite a few games. So there we are. Let's get into the round by round. In round 1, I was up against Andrew Dudek in a very, very interesting 3-game series. He was playing Manectric Bats, and game 1, I was able to get Gallade up on the first turn, which really helps me out. But not as much as you might think, because Andrew is playing 4 Flash Energy, and he's also playing a very high Super Scoop Up count. It was either 3 or 4 of those as well, so Gallade wasn't getting 1 hits, but simply having that sort of HP means that I can still run through Manectrics fairly easily. Andrew never put a Muscle Band on a Crobat, so it was never too big of an issue him using Skill Dive to the Gallade, and I was able to race ahead on prize trade by killing 1 Manectric and then Lysandering up Lysandered up a Shaman, and then I was able to take the last 2 prizes quite quickly with Zoroark on another Shaman. In game 2, he goes first and develops 3 Zubats on his bench and attaches to a Manectric. And I have Zorua active, and I Ultra Ball to find another Zorua, because my hand has a Zoroark in it. Just the regular, the standard Zoroark, not the break. So next turn, I'm able to get a Gallade up for certain, no matter what the top deck, because I will have... I had another Ultra Ball in hand, so I could have got rid of anything that I top decked into, evolved into Zoroark, and then I had the VS Seeker to get Gallade out. But it meant that I had to get Zorua that turn from the first Ultra Ball, because if my active Zorua died, I still had the Zorua on the bench, so I could evolve into Zoroark. So it was kind of risky, me having just 2 60 HP Pokemon out. And that actually came back to haunt me very quickly, as he was able to develop 1 Golbat, and that was the thing in the active position, so he did that so he could free retreat into his Manectric whilst putting 20 on the bench Zorua. He then was able to use a Judge, and he needed to hit, either double Level Ball or like a combination of Level Ball, Super Scoop Up and stuff like this off of a Judge, and he ends up getting like 1 Super Scoop Up, 2 Trainer's Mail, and then another card, and then the other energy for the Manectric to attack with. So he gets that extra energy, so now his Manectric is hitting 60 to kill the active Zorua, so he just needs to get the Golbats. He flips 1 heads on the Super Scoop Up straight away, so he's only 20 off. Then he Trainer's Mails into the last Level Ball to get the game as well. So game 2 is just 2 turns. So it ends up going to game 3, and it ends up actually going to time our game 3. Fortunately, when time is called, I think he's turn 0. yeah, he's turn 0 when time is called, which gives me a bit of an advantage because I have enough time to plan out my next 2 turns, if that makes sense. And I had only taken 2, so that turn it meant that I had to take 2 prizes. The way I went about that was going for a rush in with Zoroark, I think. No, it must have been Gallade, I think. Went in with Gallade, Lysandered up Shaman, and then I had to pull either VS Seeker or Lysander off of my prizes. And I was able to do that, which is really awesome. I think he still used Judge, but at that time I had Judge-proofed myself, basically, to where I had like a 6-card deck. And obviously I still had stuff like Trainer's Mail and Premonition available to me. So I was always going to get the final Lysander off of there once I pulled it out of my 2 prizes, which was pretty cool. So I was able to win on the last turn of time. And so on turn 1 of time I took 2 prizes, and then on turn 3 I also took my last 2 prizes to win game, which was pretty awesome. I think at one point he was going for the knockout on Gallade. So he used a super scoop up on Crobat to then pick it up so he could get the extra surprise bite damage, plus he'd be attacking once again with the Crobat. But he missed the Muscle Band later on through his turn, so he couldn't actually kill my Gallade. And it was much safer for him to go for the Shaman. But I think because he went for the Crobat out, and if he had finished that turn taking a prize, he could have ended up winning, because that was on turn 0 where he did the miss. So I can see why he went for the win rather than just play for the draw kind of thing. Seeing as it was only round 1 as well, I think you may as well go for the win on round 1. But it ended up going against him because he could have just super scoop up Shaman and said, extended the hand saying I can't take the prizes. But obviously that's hindsight, and it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot easier for me to say it now when he still had a few cards to dig for that Muscle Band, which could have killed my Gallade and thus taken out the only attacking threat that I had, really, because he didn't have enough bench for Zoroark to be effective enough. So there we are. I ended up to scrape round 1 with a win, which is nice. In round 2, I'm up against Oliver Barnett. He's one of the Sceptile players on the day, and it's something that I didn't want to run into. He said as we sat down that he knew what I was playing, and he was like, well, I think I've got a good matchup here. And yeah, he does have a good matchup in my opinion. Game 1, he just draws pretty awfully. He's not able to get the Sceptile up. He does actually hit 5 out of 5 heads flips, though, on super scoop ups. And what's the other thing that he has to flip on? Oh, Sleep Poison, I think. So he stayed in the game a little bit longer, really, than he should have, based on such a bad hand. But I was able to win game 1. And then in game 2, again, he has a pretty awkward hand. I think a thing that really hurt him in the matchup was that he started to attach Grass Energy to the active Pokemon. And if you're a Sceptile player, you really shouldn't be doing this. You should put it on your bench Sceptiles, because they're much safer on the bench, and you run 4 Super Scoop Up anyway, and healing anyway, so you can just let your active Pokemon just take hits in the face. It was something that Oliver wasn't doing, so by the time he did have that Mega Sceptile ready to go, he just had 1 Jagged Saber ready, and then I was just going to kill it, so it's really not the approach you need with Mega Sceptile. You need to be much slower, more progressive. You want to get into that cycle. That's the thing that's going to win you the game, not just doing Jagged Saber turn 2. So it's slightly because of not optimal play by Oliver, but also he had pretty bad hands, I think, in both of those games. So quite fortunate. It's one of those matchups where I feel like I have to draw well or he has to draw poorly for me to win the games, but those things did happen. So there we are, on to round 3. Round 3, I'm in a mirror match against Brian Peach, and a pretty interesting set of games. It's very much a case of getting the Gallade up. Game 1, I get Gallade up and win. Game 2, he does the thing, gets the Maxi going earlier and wins. And then by the time we finished our 2 games, there's definitely no time for Game 3. I think there was about 3 minutes left of the time. So instead of just either of us losing to a donk or something like that, Brian offered to ID, and I accepted because, I think it's a pretty fair thing. There was not going to be any way to finish the game other than someone getting donked, and we're both equally susceptible to that. So I thought, you know what, yeah, let's just ID and play it safe. So 2-0-1 after round 3. So in round 4, I'm up against Wendy Styles, and she's playing Trevgar, which is probably one of our favourite matchups because we just have so many attacking options with a dark Pokemon. We can get energy back with Baby YVeltal, so it all points in the good direction. Game 1, she wins the flip, and she's able to develop Wally turn 1 to get Trevor going. And this is pretty disgusting for me because I have Lone Baby YVeltal, and my hand is 7 trainers, and my next 2 top decks are trainers, and by that time she's set up Gengar to kill me. So I lose game 1 pretty quickly, but games 2 and 3, when I'm able to go, well, I'm able to go first in game 2, set up my dudes, I win really quickly. And in game 3, she's able to get the Wally again turn 1, but I have enough bench Pokemon and Dark Energy in the hand to play with to start getting over her first Trevenant. By the time I beat that, then she's left without any Phantoms on the Pumpkaboos on the bench. Is it Phantoms? Yeah, Phantoms. And then I have trainers again, so I can properly develop, use compressors to get rid of all the junk in my deck to the point where I can just keep sweeping through quite easily. I think I get YVeltal EX up to like 8 energy at some point, something like that, just because I can keep attaching to it and keep swinging in the face. So I'm able to win round 4 fairly convincingly, just based on the matchup more than anything else. In round 5, I'm up against Rick Cherry. He was someone who cut last weekend by playing YVeltal Zoroark. Today he was playing Vespiquen Zoroark, a pretty interesting take on the deck. I have tested Vespiquen Zoroark and I wasn't a fan. Because it feels like you don't really want to discard your Zoroark pieces because they're too valuable, and also it makes double colourless a very, very valuable resource as well. So it was interesting to see how he played the matchup. He did play the deck quite nicely. It seemed to tick along quite well for him as well. But in game 1, this was another best of 3, and well, it went to 3 games. Game 1, develop Gallade, I'm able to Lysander. Once you get Gallade, basically you have access to all your VS Seekers and DCs whenever you want them. So I was able to chain knockouts on his Vespiquens really quickly. And because you don't really need that much bench space on your side of the board, his Zoroarks were never threatening. So I only ever had to deal with the Vespiquens. Once I did that, he scooped quite quickly. Into game 2, I'm missing the Maxi combo and I'm digging for it super hard. Just because I have no other attacking options. And he also goes ahead on prize trade because I led Shaman. So I felt like I was always on the back foot, and I knew that I had prized the Shaman as well. And I just went for a full-on YOLO Ultra Ball to find Unknown to have 1 card. And if that 1 card was a supporter card or a way of getting a Maxi combo, I'd be straight back in that game because I literally had to respond and kill a Vespiquen that turn. So I couldn't have got anything else with the Ultra Ball, if that makes sense. I couldn't just attach to YVeltal EX on the bench because he used the teammates and he only played 1 card of that teammates, so he definitely had VS Seeker in his hand or something like that. I knew it was too good for me to just attach and pass, so I had to go for Gallade or bust. Top deck off the Unknown and it's useless, so I just scoop. Into game 3, it goes much more like game 1 where I set up and do nicely. Just based on how his deck runs, it meant that my Zoroarks were really potent as well, so I was able to trade on his Vespiquens quite quickly. And once Gallade gets set up as well, like I say, we're able to use that premonition to our advantage to have great hands every turn. So very, very nice. I don't think it's a very favourable matchup for us. It all depends on Gallade, and I'm going to say this for the deck in general. As soon as you develop Gallade, you just have such a better day for all your games when you get him set up. He just sorts out all your nasty top decks and stuff like that. Your hands become really good. You just have more options than your opponent, so the deck is very much a story of get Gallade out and win, or don't get it out and you have a much harder time, so there we are. Into round 6, I'm up against Ryan Morehouse, and it's another mirror match. I tied the first mirror, but in this mirror I was able to win, and again, it's a case of, we had a really long game 1. I got the Gallade out first. I think it was turn 3 or something, but he was really missing it. He was able to get himself down to a 1-card hand, but he had to play a supporter to get there, so I think he used Hex Maniac and then passed, holding that 1-card hand. Then he top decks and it was an unplayable card. I think it was something like AZ. So he missed a Gallade there, and from that AZ he had to pick up Shaman and get more cards, so he was not getting the Gallade the whole game. So once I was able to develop my Gallade, I was able to do good work there. Zoroark is also a nice attacker in the matchup. So many good things going on. You have to be careful about yours and your opponent's YVeltal EXs, of course. It is that little YVeltal war. But I was able to negotiate it a bit better just because I had that premonition to get me into stuff like Lysander when I needed it. So I was able to win game 1. And just because of the length of the game, I was able to play out game 2 without ever being in threat, because time was going to be called too quickly before he could take the prizes. I just made sure that I had a lot of baby YVeltal to stream, force him to take awkward KOs and stuff like that, take my time, use every card in my deck and stuff like that. It wasn't slow playing at all, but I was taking every option that I had and not rushing it. So there we are. I was able to win round 6 just by winning the one game and then waiting till time, basically. And because of my 502 record, I think I was the only player on 502 at the time. I was able to ID with Jake Wolvin in the final round. He was playing Totina, so huge props to him. I think he was one of the only Totina players on the day. Yeah, we went to go get some food and chill out for a bit. So pretty nice. We both knew that we guaranteed cut from IDing. So I won all of my games and then had one draw, and then both of my draws were intentional IDs. So there we are. Pretty good stuff for Swiss. So here are the standings. There I am at the top at 502. Luke Kirkham also at 502 with Monetric Bats. Then we see Septile, played by Tom Rush. Ryan Morehouse, the mirror match that I beat in round 6. And then there's Jake, who I ID'd with, playing Totina. And then we see 3 Vespiquen decks, 2 of them being the YVeltal Crobat build, the one that pretty much me and Ross have been doing well with the last couple of weeks. I know Tamal's been playing it as well. He's just not had quite the results until this week, so fair play to him. And then there's also Paul Stringer with Vespiquen Bronzong bats. And I feel like Bronzong is probably superior now that not much is going down in play. But I still think the YVeltal build is quite nice for stuff like mirror matches, because you're slightly faster than the Bronzong deck. And also Baby YVeltal's really good at taking initial prizes, if that makes sense. So I think Baby YVeltal's still probably the best way of building it, but Paul managing to do well there with the Bronzong build, so well done to him. So, in the top 8, I'm actually up against Paul, and yeah, he is playing Vespiquen Bronzong Bats, and he's also got this really cool 1/1 tech of Miss Magius. It has the Twisted Incantation, that's what it's called. And it's basically N, but a single-sided N, so I have to, when he evolves into Miss Magius, I have to shuffle my hand and draw as many cards as I have prizes. So it's a little disruption factor, gives you a bit of a comeback again for Vespiquen, which is pretty cool because Vespiquen's really good late game. So if you can end someone and then just chain a couple of KOs, like, you can completely swing a game round. So I really like the concept of Miss Magius in the deck, especially because it's one of these cards that if it's not going to work out for you, you can just dump for extra Be Revenge damage. So we had an interesting game 1. I was able to take a few early prizes with Baby YVeltal with muscle bands, and hit a couple of Lysanders on Combies as well. And because he was forced to discard Sacred Ash quite early on in the game, he ended up scooping about 15 to 20 minutes in. When he eventually gets one Vespiquen going, I'm able to just Y-Cyclone to kill it, and he extends the hand because there was 3 Combi in his discard pile, and pretty difficult for him there. And then in game 2, it's unfortunate, even more unfortunate for him, because again he had to get rid of Sacred Ash in his opening hand. And it's even quicker that he extends the hand in this game because he flips over his prizes and he has 3 Vespiquen, 1 Combi, all in his remaining 5 prize cards. So that's pretty disgusting for him. Scrubbed out a cut just because of his prizes, which is a bit of a shame. I was able to win game 1. I feel like obviously his hands were bad enough where he had to use the Sacred Ash. But even when he had dumped Sacred Ash, he continued to dump Pokemon. And this was something that surprised me. I feel like using the bats effectively, like knowing that you don't have Sacred Ash, he was still going for the full-on YOLO Vespiquen, get huge damage output. I feel like that isn't the approach he should have gone for. He pretty much had to develop bats that game. Crobat has an annoying HP for YVeltal EX, because I can't commit that much energy to an EX Pokemon when you have the threat of Vespiquen around. If he had managed his board better, Zoroark would be out of range, and Gallade is out of range unless I have Muscle Band. So if he had been using the bats a bit more effectively, I think he could have done better in that top 8 game. But it's still really awkward for him just based on the Vespiquens alone. I think he pretty much just felt defeated after seeing his prizes, that 3 Vespiquen were in the prizes. But there's sometimes when, it doesn't hurt to carry on a game, just see how you can do with the bats, Yeah, he continued to dump them straight away with Compressor so that his one Vespiquen would hopefully pull another one off the prizes. So it's I guess it's an interesting approach. I think he took one prize in game 2, so he had a 50-50 chance of getting a Vespiquen out, which could have got him again. Like, if he had carried on going down that route, he could have pulled multiple Vespiquen from his prizes, so can't really argue with his approach, but I feel like he went kind of YOLO in game 2 after seeing that his prizes were so awkward. I feel like you have to hold on to every single one of your bats and not compressor any of them away. But there we are. I'm able to get through into the top 4. So here are the other top 8 results. I'm on the top there. That's the first matchup. Then we see Ryan Morehouse was able to beat Jake Wolvin's Sizewater Giratina. And then we see who was playing the Manectric Bats. Nick Pierce playing Manectric Bats. Yeah, he was playing up against Luke Kirkham's Manectric and he's able to win. And Tamao was able to beat Tom Rush's Mega Sceptile. So, in the top 4, I'm faced with Ryan once again, the mirror match that we played once again in Swiss. I won in Swiss, but had game 2, had it not gone to time, he probably would have won it. I was going for the sort of stalling approach based on his good setup. So we had a very interesting best of 3. Game 1, every time it's about I don't really know what else to say. It's all about the Gallade. Get Gallade going. He's such an efficient attacker as well, because it's really awkward for YVeltal EX to knock out a Gallade. It's really awkward for Zoroark to knock out a Gallade. I think the best way you can kill Gallade is using your own Gallade, and if your opponent doesn't have Gallade set up, they don't obviously have that option, so it's quite easy once you get the first Gallade going to start doing really well, because you have the extra top decks and you have the potential to attack for huge numbers. Also Zoroark's a really nice attacker. In game 1, he put a really big bench size down, and it helped me use Zoroark to take a few prizes here and there as well. So I think in every game he was the one taking the first prize, but it meant that he was bringing up useful attackers. I was normally staying with baby YVeltal in the active and trying to set up as best I can and put initial counters on things like YVeltal EXs and even his own baby YVeltals, because they all do have kind of annoying chunky HPs, so putting that initial 30 can be actually really relevant at times. And so yeah, when he's taking the first prize with things like Zoroark, I can come in and respond, and then he's lost a Zoroark and I've only lost a baby YVeltal, so it's kind of like that resource war. I was able to win game 1. Game 2, I can't develop Maxi until the turn that I scoop, because I was so far behind in the game. And in game 3, it goes to time, and he has a slightly better setup than me. He got the Gallade out first. I was able to get Gallade, but it was Lysander killed, and that was my only out to victory had I kept it. But obviously he had Gallade out for 3 or 4 more turns than me. So as I know, once you get Gallade out, you can draw into everything that you need. So I couldn't really complain. I knew I was in a really bad spot in game 3, and he was able to win on the last turn of time, but he was ahead of prizes anyway, so I think it wasn't really an issue for him. So there we are. I lost to Ryan in the top 4. In the other top 4 game, it was another mirror match, and it was Tamao who was able to beat Nick Pierce's YVeltal Vespiquen Crobat. I think Tamao played Bridget, and I believe that was one of the cards that came pretty clutch in the matchups. It meant going first that he could flood the field of Zubats and then threaten all of Nick's Combies, and going second it means you can get multiple Combies out to mean that Nick's Zubats do not kill enough Combies to the point where you have nothing to attack with. So I feel like Bridget is a really nice card. Obviously it's not going to win you the mirror on its own. I'm sure there was some interesting play going on there, but Tamao was the one able to come out in that best of 3, which is pretty nice. I think he actually ended up donking Nick at least one of the games, so kind of unfortunate there, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. So in the final, we saw Ryan come out on top against Tamao. Those are the two in the picture. Ryan's on the right, Tamao's on the left, both of their prize packs. And I didn't see the final. I was sort of milling around because Tamao was in the car that we were going home in. So I was there, but I was opening my own prize packs and just, when you played that many games of Pokemon, you're just sort of tired, wiped out. You don't really want to watch the final, just let them get on with it sort of thing. But I believe it went to game 3. I can't remember if it went to time or not. I believe it probably did. But Ryan again was able to come out on top. I think he had to pull a VS Seeker off of his prizes, and he was able to do that, which meant he could get Lysander to take his last couple of prizes. So there we are. Ryan able to come out on top with YVeltal Gallade Zoroark, proving its power, both myself and him, as it got very far in the tournament and ended up winning as well. So here are the final standings. That photo that I just slapped in just for the sake of it is to show you that I'm on 435 championship points now, which is pretty insane. After just 5 regionals, that's my point total, which is pretty cool. Second in the UK right now, just thought I'd throw that in there. But yeah, there's the final standings. Congrats to Ryan, congrats to Tamao as well, and everyone else in the top cut. Well done to all of you. And it's a case of Vespiquen being a really good deck, YVeltal Zoroark Gallade being a really good deck. Manectric sort of underperformed, but one squeaked into cut. Luke Kirkham, you can expect him to be in most top cuts no matter what he's playing. And Sceptile was an interesting pick as well, so really nice to see that doing well. So let's look on to next week at West Sussex. I'm actually not turning up because I've got my points now. I don't have to. I'm going to have a much awaited lie-in. I've not had a lie-in, oh my god, for so long. Pokemon gets you up at dawn pipsqueak and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, I'm going to not be there, guys. So I thought I'd just give a little rundown of what you could probably expect and maybe a nice little fun pick as well at the end. So hopefully this is entertaining. Yeah, I feel like YVeltal Gallade Zoroark is probably our best deck in format right now. Probably combined with Vespiquen. These are my top 2 picks, really. If you're just going for a powerful deck on their own, those are my 2 favourite decks right now. I really like YVeltal Gallade especially because it's really hard to counter this deck. It has good type coverage, it has so many attacking options that you're pretty much always going to get caught by something. No matter what you're playing, something's going to be a pain for you to get around, so I feel like YVeltal Gallade is a really nice pick, especially because you can just deal with your own top decks, and once you get Gallade up, your whole setup is just so much nicer. It's just beautiful, ticks along really nicely. Manectric builds are still really popular. I think they need to play a high flash energy count just to keep up with Gallade. Also, the bat builds seem to be coping better than the Mega decks right now. It means you have extra backdrops to deal with Vespiquen a bit nicer, and you also have an attacker against Gallade. So I think Manectric Bats is the best way to play Manectric right now. Vespiquen has pretty much proven itself in the last 2-3 weeks now as a really strong deck, and I think it's going to continue to do so. I think it's our best non-EX deck right now. And also I think Sceptile, it did make cut, and I also think it's a really strong pick as well. It's pretty good against YVeltal Gallade. It's okay against Manectric. It's kind of a war of headringers at times. But it's definitely winnable because you do have that Theta stop, of course. So Sceptile's a good pick as well, as long as Night March stays away. And speaking of Night March, where did it really go this weekend? I didn't see any of it. It wasn't in Top Cut last weekend. I think there was only one person. I think Joseph Phillips came top 16 with Night March. I think he was one of the only people playing it over the weekend, and I still think there's space for it, YVeltal Gallade Zoroark, it's not as much as a hard counter as Vespiquen YVeltal Bats, and if more people are going over to the Gallade builds, Night March is going to be slightly improved, especially because you can, kill the YVeltal EXs and the Shaman EXs and stuff like that, so there's probably still space for Night March around. It can also do has a really good matchup against Sceptile if people are jumping onto that bandwagon as well, so especially if you're worried about Manectric Bats, you can even play Mr. Mime if you want to, so plenty of options for Night March still. I still think it's a decent pick a lot of the time, so you should still be on the lookout for that deck. It should be coming back here or there, a little bit more I expect. So here's my own 2 cents. This is the deck that I've been testing this week. I wasn't certain that I was going to be going this weekend, and I've decided just not to, basically, because it's too much hassle. It's on a Sunday as well, which is the main reason I don't want to go. If it was on a Saturday, I probably would have gone, but I just can't because I have to get home for work and stuff on the Monday, and it's just too far of a journey for me. But this was the deck I probably would have played. So, yeah, Houndoom. Not many people have been discussing Houndoom, but based on my logic in the last slide, Houndoom functions quite similarly to Sceptile, in that he stays out of the HP range of quite a few things. He stays out of range for anything in the YVeltal deck quite nicely. So in that instance, you should have a good matchup, especially because Inferno Fang discards the energy attached to Houndoom, which is pretty awesome. so he is really awkward for the YVeltal deck to deal with. Also, having that fire typing means that even the regular Houndoom can kill stuff like Vespiquen quite easily, and he can chain attackers with his first attack. Grand Flame sets up other things on the bench, which is really nice. Also, you're going to have a really good Sceptile matchup, so I feel like Houndoom is actually a really strong pick, as long as Night March stays away. Manectric is not the easiest of matchups at all, but you can see I'm playing a couple of cool techs in here that can try and win you that matchup. Namely, we're playing 2 Tool Retriever in here, and Tool Retriever is so that we can get rid of Spiritlings and put Muscle Bands onto Houndoom, so we can actually get one-shots. But it also means we can remove Headringers from our Houndooms, so we're always going to be attacking for that 2 energy cost, and we're always going to be able to Mega up whenever we want to. So I feel like Houndoom's a really nice pick. It's not the strongest against Giratina, but we do have those 2 non-EX Entei. That's the Combat Blaze Entei, number 14 out of 98, the Ancient Origins one. He does 20 plus 20 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's like a little Mind Jack, but not quite as strong as the Zoroark. But of course, you can use Blacksmith to get it going in a single turn, which is pretty awesome. The build itself, I know on our profile we have a Bat build right now. This is a much more simple build, pretty much preferring getting that turn 1 Blacksmith and ultimately trying to get that 4 energy into play. Wow, I didn't even put the total number of trainers and stuff. I think, what does that mean? 37, right? Yeah, there we go. Lots of trainers in the deck. You can see it's just a full speed engine. I took out the bats just to make it more consistent, more sort of, let's get the turn 1 Grand Flame because that's a really strong attack. We get more pressure on the board that way than doing any bat drops most of the time anyway, so I feel like it's good enough without the bats just because we have the muscle bands and we also play 1 Giovanni scheme as well. Most of the time we should be able to one-shot things, and even then, stuff like Mega Manectric, it survives without having to one-shot stuff, so normally you're going to be fine anyway. One of the things I would talk about the deck, it doesn't have many switching options. We've got 1 Escape Rope, 1 Floatstone, 1 AZ. Kind of annoying. We are playing Parallel City. That's mainly so that we can get rid of the Shamans and the Hooper that we use on our bench, so that our opponent doesn't have Lysander targets, which is pretty big. Another easy thing about the retreating, because we can go into the Mega and have a single retreat cost, we can retreat out of our Mega, Blacksmith onto a regular Houndoom on the bench, and then use Grand Flame for 50 and reattach to our Mega. That's a nice little combo that the deck has available to it. We of course have Burning Energy as well to recover energy once we've used Inferno Fang, so I feel like this is a very potent deck. It's underplayed right now, but it's one I feel now that YVeltal is getting much stronger. This is a pretty good matchup against YVeltal, and is also going to surprise a few people on the day as well, so definitely try out this deck. I feel like it's a fun one and could even be a very strong pick in the upcoming weekends. I feel like it would be, if I was going to play this weekend, I'd be playing with Houndoom. But then again, I've already got my points, so I can kind of be crazy and take these weird lines of play. But there we are. Even against some random stuff like Vespiquen and Night March, you have the out of using Melting Horn to try and deck them out. So the deck has a lot of things available to it. Another thing about the Melting Horn, actually, if you're playing up against Gallade, Melting Horn can be a really nice attack if you have nothing else to do. You can just get rid of their really important cards. Sometimes you can catch double colorless energy, sometimes you can get rid of VS Seekers and Lysanders and stuff like that. So you always put the Gallade player on a bit of an edge. They don't really know where to put their premonitions. Sometimes they're top decking into worse cards than they would have wanted because they're worried about the Melting Horn. Sometimes they're not even considering Melting Horn. And like I say, you can get rid of stuff like DCE. So you kind of need to know what your opponent's digging for, which is not always that easy. But there are times where Melting Horn can get huge value for you. So that's something to look out for as well. So yeah, Houndoom, a pretty cool and interesting pick in my opinion, and pretty strong as well. So that is the full report, guys. Another top 4 finish. I've got a ton of points now, so even if Worlds was at 500, which I doubt it will be, I think I'll be able to get there regardless. So hopefully see you guys there. And that's it from me in terms of tournaments for, I think, until the new year when Cities start. So hope you all have fun at the next couple of regionals for the UK. I think this is the last one actually this weekend, so hopefully people can bag some points, and hope you all enjoyed. It's been Joe from OmniPoke, and I'll see you guys next time.